Captain Elias Monroe sat in the cockpit of the Odyssey, staring at the endless darkness of space. Stars shimmered like scattered diamonds on black velvet, and asteroid debris floated lazily in the distance. The freighter's engines hummed steadily, the sound almost soothing after months in the outer rim. Elias had been traveling alone for weeks, delivering supplies to remote colonies, and the loneliness sometimes felt heavier than the vacuum outside. A sudden flicker on the radar broke the quiet. A tiny blip pulsed faintly, hidden among the usual asteroid clutter. Elias frowned. "What is that?" he muttered to himself. Curiosity sparked, and despite the warning sirens of the navigation system, he altered course toward the signal. The asteroid field grew dense, jagged rocks spinning in chaotic orbits. Elias maneuvered carefully, pushing the Odyssey to its limits. The blip became clearer, a derelict ship, battered and barely functional, drifting silently among the stones. "Looks like someone needs help," Elias said aloud, even though the ship was empty, or so he thought. He activated the external scanners, trying to detect life signs. A weak heartbeat appeared, a single pulse, faint but undeniable. Without hesitation, he aligned the freighter to dock. His mind raced with questions. Why was a ship this far out? Abandoned? Who could survive here? The scanners didn't reveal much, only that the life form was humanoid. That was enough. Elias had never been the type to leave someone to die if he could help it. He suited up and floated into the docking bay, magnetic boots gripping the metal floor. The derelict ship's interior was dark, lights flickering intermittently. Panels were cracked, wire sparking, and a strange scent, like burnt ozone, hung in the air. Elias's eyes adjusted, scanning for movement. Then he saw her. She lay on the floor of the control room, pale blue skin faintly glowing under the emergency lights. Her hair shimmered with silvery streaks, her limbs fragile, and her chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. Elias's heart tightened. "Hey," he said softly, kneeling beside her. "Can you hear me?" Her eyes opened slowly, revealing irises that glimmered like liquid sapphires. She tried to speak, but her voice was a whisper, almost musical in its tone. Elias could not understand her words, but the look of fear and exhaustion was clear. "Don't worry," he said, gently lifting her. "You're safe now." She leaned against him, and for the first time, Elias felt the weight of responsibility. This was no longer a simple rescue. It was a chance to save a life. He carried her back to the Odyssey, careful not to jostle her fragile body. Once inside, he laid her on a medical table and activated the healing nanobots. The blue glow of the nanobots danced across her skin, repairing minor injuries, sealing cuts, and stabilizing her heart rate. Slowly, color returned to her face, and her breathing grew steady. Elias watched in awe. Despite her weakness, there was a quiet strength in her posture, a grace that seemed almost unnatural. Hours passed. She slept, and he stayed by her side, checking the ship's course and systems. He learned her name from a small insignia on her uniform, Lyria. It sounded delicate, fragile even, but there was something regal in the way it rolled off his tongue. Elias didn't realize then that she was no ordinary alien. Lyria was a queen in disguise, traveling incognito to understand her empire and its people. She had survived assassination attempts, political betrayals, and interstellar wars. To him, she was just a woman in need of help. By the next day, Lyria stirred. Her eyes opened again, and this time, Elias could see intelligence burning in them. She attempted to rise, but pain forced her back down. Elias knelt beside her. "You're awake," he said. Her voice was still faint, but she managed to say a single word, repeated in different tones, trying to communicate. Elias frowned, realizing she spoke a language unfamiliar to humans. He pulled up a universal translator, but the words came out as garbled symbols. Frustration crossed his face. "I don't understand," he admitted. She blinked slowly, then gestured toward the cockpit, then back to herself, as if asking for protection. Elias nodded, realizing her trust in him was absolute. That night, a storm approached. Not of weather, but of danger. Radar detected an unidentified ship moving fast, heading toward the Odyssey. Its shape was sleek, predatory. Elias felt a chill. Whoever had attacked Lyria before was still hunting her. "Looks like trouble," he muttered. He engaged the ship's stealth systems and maneuvered into the denser part of the asteroid field, hoping to hide. The pursuing ship, however, anticipated his moves, slicing through the debris like a knife. "Hang on," Elias said to Lyria, though she didn't understand. He activated evasive thrusters, weaving through narrow passages. Rocks scraped the hull, and alarms blared. Sweat dripped down his face, but he kept focus. Every turn, every spin, mattered. One mistake would tear the freighter apart. Suddenly, the attacker fired. Energy bolts struck the Odyssey, tearing through the outer hull. Lyria screamed, not in fear, but in pain. Elias felt helpless for the first time. He gritted his teeth and returned fire, using the freighter's weapons in ways no one had ever thought necessary. He improvised, turning the small cargo freighter into a fighting ship, dodging blasts and using the asteroids as cover. Finally, after what felt like hours but was only minutes, the pursuing ship broke off. Elias let out a long breath, his hands shaking. Lyria's eyes met his. Gratitude and something else reflected in them. Something he could not name. "You saved me," she whispered, her voice soft but full of meaning. Elias smiled faintly, though the adrenaline still surged. "That's what I do," he replied. In the following days, Elias worked to help her recover fully. He adjusted the freighter's medical bay, monitored her health, and even tried to teach her simple human phrases. She learned quickly, picking up nuances that surprised him. There was intelligence, curiosity, and patience in her eyes that humans could only hope to match. During one quiet evening, as the freighter glided through the empty stars, Lyria managed to communicate something new. The universal translator finally picked up a coherent phrase. "Danger comes for both." Elias frowned, unsettled. "What does that mean?" he asked. She could not explain further, only shook her head, her eyes darkening with worry. A shiver ran down his spine. Whatever threat they were facing was larger than he imagined. Yet, in the darkness of space, he also felt something else. Hope. Despite her injuries, despite the danger, she had survived this far. He marveled at her resilience. And for the first time in years, Elias felt that maybe this mission, this encounter, was more than just another job. It was something meaningful, but peace never lasts long in space. The next day, another signal appeared on the radar, this one faint, almost impossible to detect. Elias frowned. He knew instinctively that the chase wasn't over. Whoever wanted Lyria would not give up. And now, they had him. Human ingenuity, courage, and sheer unpredictability standing in their way. Lyria noticed his tension. Her hand brushed against his arm, a gesture so human and yet so alien at the same time. Elias caught her hand, surprising himself. It was a moment of connection, a silent acknowledgement that they were partners in this fight, whether they realized it or not. As the freighter moved deeper into the asteroid field, Elias plotted their course. He would need to think fast, act faster, and rely on everything he knew about piloting, combat, and survival. He glanced at Lyria, whose gaze was steady, unyielding, and full of quiet strength. "Whatever happens," he said softly, "we'll get through it." Her eyes seemed to promise the same, though Elias did not know she was already planning how to repay this debt. Not with money, not with gratitude, but with something far more significant. Something neither of them could yet imagine. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, and the Odyssey sailed on, carrying a human and a queen who did not yet reveal her crown. Danger lurked in every shadow of space, but for the first time, Elias felt that maybe he was not just a man alone in the void. He had purpose. He had responsibility. And he had someone worth saving. And somewhere in the depths of the galaxy, forces stirred, watching, waiting. The rescue of a single alien woman had set in motion events that could alter the course of empires, and humanity itself had no idea what role it would play. The Odyssey drifted through a quiet stretch of space, far from the chaos of trade routes and colonial outposts. Captain Elias Monroe sat in the cockpit, eyes fixed on the stars, though his mind was far from calm. Lyria had recovered enough to move and speak, but the memory of the attack still weighed on him. Every flicker on the radar made him flinch. Every shadow on the screens felt like another threat waiting to strike. Lyria sat across from him in the medical bay, her pale blue skin glowing softly under the lights. She watched him as he worked, her sapphire eyes curious and intelligent. But something more lingered there, a quiet admiration, almost like awe.
Elias didn't notice it at first.
He was focused on survival, on keeping them alive in a galaxy that had already proven hostile. "Captain," Lyria said, her voice steady but soft, "you are different."
Elias blinked. "Different how?" She paused, trying to find the right words.
"You do not panic. You make choices. You protect, well, not just yourself, but others. That is unusual among your kind." Elias chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. "I do what I have to. That's all any human can do out here." Her eyes flickered with something he could not name, a mixture of curiosity and respect. Elias had rescued her without knowing who she truly was. She had noticed more than he realized. His courage, his ingenuity, his quick thinking. In her own way, she had begun to admire him. Days passed as the freighter moved farther from the asteroid field. Elias taught Lyria simple human words and gestures, and she learned quickly. Her ability to understand and adapt amazed him. Even when language failed, she found ways to communicate, pointing, gesturing, or using the small universal translator to convey her thoughts. One evening, as the freighter glided past a ringed planet, alarms blared. The radar detected multiple fast-moving ships, closing in with military precision. Elias's heart sank. He recognized the patterns immediately. These were not random attackers. They were hunting Lyria, and now he was caught in the middle. "Looks like we have company," Elias said, his tone calm but firm. He powered up the engines and weapon systems, maneuvering the freighter into a narrow canyon of asteroids. The attackers followed, weaving through the rocks with deadly precision. Lyria watched him silently, her eyes reflecting both fear and trust. She reached out, touching the console as if willing it to work faster. A faint energy shimmer passed through her fingers. Elias noticed but didn't comment. He had more pressing matters. The enemy ships fired, energy beams slicing through the void. Elias twisted the Odyssey, using asteroids for cover, firing back when openings appeared. Lyria leaned over his shoulder, pointing out weak points in their pursuers' formation. Elias's jaw dropped. She had knowledge of tactics he couldn't explain.
You know this," he said, glancing at her. She nodded slightly, a faint smile on her lips.
"I have seen battles. I have trained." The realization hit him slowly. She was more than she seemed, far more than a stranded traveler. But there was no time for questions. Together they fought, human intuition and alien strategy combining to outmaneuver the attackers. By the time the last pursuer fled, the freighter was battered but intact. Elias slumped back in his seat, breathing heavily. Lyria touched his arm gently. "You are remarkable," she said simply. Elias felt a warmth at her words, though he tried not to show it. Over the next few days, their relationship deepened. Elias showed Lyria the workings of the Odyssey, explaining engines, navigation, and basic survival techniques, She absorbed it all, her intelligence unmatched, her curiosity boundless. One afternoon, while repairing a damaged thruster, Lyria hesitated. "Captain, I must tell you something," she said, her voice hesitant but firm. Elias paused, wiping grease from his hands. "What is it?" "I am not ordinary," she began. "I am a leader among my people. My journey, I was observing, I never expected to be in danger. You saved me. That is unusual for a human. You are extraordinary." Elias laughed softly, a little embarrassed. "You're just a person who got stuck out here. I did what anyone would do." She shook her head. "No. You act differently. You fight not for glory, not for duty, but because it is right. Humans are unpredictable, brave, and often reckless. I see it in you. That is why I trust you." The word struck him. Trust was rare in space, rare among humans, and she had given it freely. He realized slowly that he had begun to feel something he hadn't felt in years. Connection. A bond with someone who was not human yet, so real, so alive. The next challenge came suddenly. Sensors picked up a massive asteroid storm approaching their path. Elias cursed under his breath. The storm was a natural hazard, but combined with the pursuing forces still likely tracking them, it was a deadly combination. "Hold on tight," he said, activating thrusters and shielding. The Odyssey shook violently as chunks of rock slammed against the hull. Lyria braced herself, but her hand found his, gripping tightly. For a moment, they moved as one navigating the chaos. When they finally emerged on the other side, the storm behind them, Elias glanced at her. "You're tougher than you look," he said. She smiled faintly, a mixture of relief and amusement. "You are extraordinary as well, Captain." Their days continued, filled with quiet learning and small moments of shared humanity. Lyria observed human behavior, fascinated by Elias's quick thinking, adaptability, and willingness to take risks to save others. He, in turn, watched her recover and adapt, her intelligence and resourcefulness shining through every action. One evening, as they passed a gas giant, Lyria finally managed to use the translator to convey a full sentence. "Danger comes, not just to me, to both our worlds." Elias frowned, tension rising. "What do you mean?" She shook her head, frustration flickering in her eyes. "I cannot explain yet, but you must prepare. Others will come, they will not stop, and your people, your humans, must be ready too." Elias felt the weight of her words, the truth in them. He had been a lone pilot, surviving through cunning and luck, but now he faced a threat larger than anything he had imagined. And yet, despite the fear, he felt a surge of determination. He would protect her, protect the freighter, and whatever lay ahead. Over the following weeks, Lyria helped in small ways. She repaired systems faster than any human could, sensing weaknesses in the engines and shielding. She analyzed star maps with an instinctive precision, guiding Elias through safe routes and away from hazards. He marveled at her abilities, but never asked how she knew these things. Some mysteries, he decided, were better left unexplained. Their bond grew stronger, built on trust and shared danger. Lyria began to understand human humor, laughing softly at his dry remarks. Elias began to understand her gestures, subtle signals that communicated more than words ever could. They became a team, navigating space as partners, relying on each other's strengths to survive. One night, while staring at a distant nebula, Lyria finally spoke again. "Captain, why do humans fight so hard? Against odds? Against danger? Against impossible enemies?" Elias thought for a moment, his eyes reflecting the swirling colors of the nebula. "I don't know. Maybe it's hope. Maybe it's stubbornness. Maybe we just can't help ourselves. But we keep trying, even when everything says we shouldn't. That is human nature." She listened, her eyes soft and thoughtful. "Then, perhaps that is why you saved me. Not because it was necessary, but because it was... right?" Elias nodded slowly, feeling a strange warmth in his chest. He didn't know how to explain it, but he understood that this mission, this rescue, had become something far greater than delivery routes or survival. He had found purpose, and perhaps, unknowingly, someone who would inspire him in ways he couldn't yet see. As they sailed deeper into uncharted space, the stars stretching endlessly ahead, both knew danger still lurked. The pursuers would not give up. Political forces, unknown enemies, and cosmic threats all waited in the darkness. Yet for the first time, Elias did not feel alone. Lyria sat quietly beside him, her hand occasionally brushing against his. She did not reveal her full identity, but her admiration, respect, and subtle guidance were clear. Elias, in turn, felt the beginnings of a bond that went beyond survival, a bond that would soon be tested in ways neither of them could imagine. The Odyssey continued its journey, carrying a human and a queen in disguise, racing through space with only stars and courage to guide them. And somewhere, in the shadows of the galaxy, enemies watched, unaware that they faced not just an alien, but the ingenuity, resilience, and spirit of humanity itself. The adventure was far from over, but Elias knew one thing. With Lyria by his side, whatever came next, he would face it head-on, with heart, wit, and the unyielding courage that had defined humans for generations. And deep in the void, that courage began to ripple outward, a small but growing beacon in a galaxy that had never seen such determination before. The Odyssey drifted into the outer edge of the Arveth Empire, a sprawling civilization that spanned dozens of star systems. The Empire's capital planet glimmered below, a swirling tapestry of cities, oceans, and forests, unlike anything humans had ever imagined. Elias stared at it, awestruck, unaware that the woman beside him, the alien he had rescued and grown close to, was no ordinary traveler. She was the queen, the ruler of this vast empire, moving through space in disguise to observe her people. Lyria sat quietly, her eyes fixed on the planet below. She had waited for this moment, knowing she could no longer keep her secret. The dangers pursuing them were growing, and her identity had to be revealed, not just for her safety, but for the survival of both her people and the humans she had come to respect. "Captain," she began softly, "there is something I must tell you, something important." Elias looked at her, sensing the gravity in her voice. "Go ahead. Whatever it is, I can handle it." She took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly. "I am not merely a traveler in need of rescue. I am Lyria, the queen of the Arveth Empire. My journey, my disguise. It was meant to protect me, to see my people without influence from my position. But now, you know who I am." Elias's jaw dropped. He took a step back, feeling the weight of her words. "You're the queen?" he stammered. "All this time you were royalty?" She nodded, her expression solemn. "Ooh, yeah. And your courage, your actions have saved not just me, but potentially millions. I owe you more than words can express." The revelation left Elias stunned. He had treated her as someone in need of protection, someone to help and admire. Now he realized the magnitude of what he had done. He had saved a queen, a ruler of a civilization far older and more advanced than humanity. And in doing so, he had earned her trust and respect, not just as a human, but as someone capable of extraordinary courage and judgment. Before Elias could respond, alarms blared. The Odyssey shook violently as enemy ships emerged from the shadows, sleek and deadly. The mercenaries from earlier had tracked them across light years, and now they were here to finish what they had started. Lyria's eyes narrowed, her composure returning. "They have followed us. Captain, we must act quickly." Elias gritted his teeth. "I won't let them take you." He activated the freighter's weapon systems, maneuvering with skill and precision. The asteroid belt around the planet offered some cover, but the enemy was relentless, adapting to every move. "You are brave," Lyria said quietly, almost in admiration. "But you do not see the danger fully. They seek not just me, but my throne, my people. And now you are part of this." Elias's hands moved over the controls with practiced ease, dodging blasts and returning fire. "I don't care," he said firmly. "I'm not leaving you to face this alone." Together, they fought, human ingenuity and Arveth strategy combining to survive. Lyria guided him through tight passages, predicting enemy maneuvers with uncanny precision. Elias marveled at her abilities, realizing that her skills went far beyond her royal status. She was a warrior, a strategist, and a protector of her people. After a tense and exhausting battle, the enemy ships retreated. The freighter's hull was scarred, but they were alive. Elias slumped into his seat, breathing heavily. Lyria reached out, her hand brushing his arm. "You saved me again," she said softly. Elias shook his head. "No, you saved yourself too. You guided me, told me what to do. We did this together." The following days were tense. They approached the Arveth capital, but the political landscape had shifted. Loyalists loyal to the Queen had been manipulated by factions seeking to seize power. Lyria knew that revealing her identity would invite scrutiny, suspicion, and potentially danger for Elias as well. Yet she could not hide any longer. "Captain," she said one evening, her eyes serious, "when we arrive, you must understand that not everyone will welcome you. Some will see you as a threat, others as a pawn. You must trust in your instincts, your humanity. It is a strength." Elias nodded, though uncertainty gnawed at him. He had survived countless dangers through ingenuity and courage, but politics was a battlefield of a different kind. "I'll follow you," he said simply, "no matter what comes." As they entered the capital system, the scale of the empire became clear. Massive ships orbited the planet, while cities stretched for thousands of kilometers across the surface. It was breathtaking, but also intimidating. Lyria's advisors had been preparing for her return. But the coup had already begun. Mercenaries loyal to her rivals were attempting to seize the palace. Elias and Lyria barely landed before they were ambushed. The corridors of the palace were chaotic, filled with guards, conspirators, and civilians caught in the crossfire. Lyria's grace and authority shone through as she moved, directing loyalists, calming frightened citizens, and deflecting attacks with strategic precision. Elias followed her, covering her back, improvising defenses, and protecting her from harm. "You are incredible," Elias muttered, ducking behind a pillar as energy blasts flew overhead. Lyria glanced at him, a faint smile on her lips. "And you are unpredictable. That is why you survive." Despite the chaos, a bond had formed between them, stronger than any political tension. They moved as a team, human courage and alien royalty working in tandem. Yet the danger was growing, and every step brought them closer to confrontation with the conspirators. In a vast chamber deep within the palace, they confronted the leaders of the coup. Lyria stood tall, her presence commanding, while Elias stayed close, ready to act. Words were exchanged, threats made, and then violence erupted. The chamber shook as security forces clashed, energy weapons firing, tables overturned, and alarms blaring. Elias's ingenuity proved crucial. He used his knowledge of human tactics, surprise maneuvers, flanking, and improvisation to outsmart the more technologically advanced Arveth rebels. Lyria fought alongside him, her abilities precise, her movements calculated, every action a combination of strength and strategy. But in the heat of battle, a mercenary fired at Elias from behind. Lyria reacted instantly, stepping in front of him. Energy bolt struck her, throwing her across the chamber. Elias rushed to her side, heart pounding, horror gripping him. "You cannot die," he shouted, cradling her in his arms. Her glowing skin flickered weakly, her strength fading. "You must survive," she whispered, her voice strained but clear. "Your people. Your humans. They are important. Do not let this stop you." "Promise me!" Elias shook his head, tears streaming. "No, I won't survive without you." Her eyes softened, and for the first time, she let herself show vulnerability. "It is not about me. It is about what you can do, what humans can do, beyond courage, beyond fear. Remember that." With her final strength, she pressed a small device into his hand. "This will help. Trust yourself. Trust humanity." And then she was still. Elias sat in shock, holding the queen who had become more than a companion. She had become a symbol of trust, admiration, and a bond that transcended species. The weight of loss pressed down on him, but her words echoed in his mind. She believed in humanity, in him, and in the power of courage and ingenuity to shape the future. Rage and grief fueled him. He rose, his mind sharp and determined. The conspirators had underestimated him, underestimated humanity itself. Using every skill he had, every ounce of cunning and improvisation, he turned the tide of the battle. He led the loyalists, outsmarting and outmaneuvering the coup leaders, until the palace was secure once more. When the dust settled, Elias stood in the throne room, holding the device Lyria had given him. It was a key, a map, and a message, a guide to protecting both humans and Arveth alike. Though he grieved, he understood that her sacrifice was not in vain. She had entrusted him with a responsibility greater than any single life, the chance to unite worlds, to show that humanity's courage and ingenuity could influence the galaxy. The people of the Arveth Empire looked at him with awe and respect, seeing in his actions the power of a species they had underestimated. Humans, unpredictable, brave, and moral, had shaped the course of an empire. Elias felt a mix of sorrow and pride. He had lost Lyria, but he had gained something far more enduring: purpose, recognition, and a chance to honor her legacy.
As he looked out over the capital, he whispered softly, "I won't forget you, Lyria."
"I will make sure your sacrifice was not in vain." Somewhere in the stars, her spirit seemed to linger, a guiding presence, a reminder that courage, intelligence, and heart could cross the boundaries of worlds and species. Elias felt it, and he knew that whatever came next, humanity would rise to meet it, inspired by the queen who had given everything for him and for the future of both their worlds. The battle was over, but the journey was far from finished. Elias, now carrying the weight of her legacy, prepared to step into a galaxy forever changed by one human's bravery, and the queen who had believed in him enough to die for it. The throne room was silent, except for the low hum of the palace systems and the faint breathing of Elias Monroe. The glow of the city outside reflected off the polished floors, but inside, it felt as if the universe had narrowed to the single figure of the queen he had lost. Lyria's pale blue form lay still in his arms, the warmth and light she once radiated, now gone. Yet her final words echoed clearly in his mind. "Trust yourself. Trust humanity." Elias pressed the small device she had given him. It pulsed softly in his hand. A map, a key, and a message from Lyria herself. Her sacrifice was not simply the end. It was a beginning, a guide to protecting both her people and the humans who had now become entwined in galactic politics. He stared at it for a long time, feeling grief and determination intertwine. Lyria had believed in him. Now it was his responsibility to honor that belief. He rose, his legs shaky but his resolve firm. Around him, the palace loyalists who had survived the coup looked at him with awe. They had seen the humans in battle, unpredictable and resourceful, their ingenuity turning the tide when advanced Arveth technology had seemed unstoppable. Elias realized that, in their eyes, humanity had proven its worth. not through numbers, not through superior firepower, but through courage, intuition, and moral clarity. Outside, the city still faced danger. Rebel factions loyal to the coup lingered in the shadows, waiting to reclaim control. Elias could not allow them to rise again. Not after everything. Using the information Lyria had provided, he coordinated defenses, guiding the Loyalists through strategies that combined human improvisation with Arveth military precision. Weeks passed. Elias became a symbol of hope and strength to both humans and Arveth citizens. He navigated the political landscape with care, avoiding unnecessary bloodshed, while rooting out conspirators. His decisions were not always perfect, but they were bold and decisive, reflecting the qualities that had allowed him to survive countless dangers across the stars. Yet in the quiet moments, he felt the emptiness of Lyria's absence, her laughter, her guidance, her subtle confidence. These were gone. He remembered the first time she had touched his arm as the freighter shook during the asteroid storm, the way her sapphire eyes had reflected admiration and trust. Those memories fueled him, giving him strength to continue. He visited the royal gardens frequently, places Lyria had loved even before she had revealed her identity. He walked among the strange luminescent plants, the air filled with unfamiliar scents that reminded him of life beyond human worlds. Often he would sit by a fountain, holding the device she had left him, tracing the glowing lines of the map she had crafted. Through the device, he discovered more than tactical information. It contained records of her observations of humanity, notes on what made humans special. Lyria had watched them from afar and concluded that humans were unpredictable, resilient, and morally courageous. Elias realized that her words had not only been for him, they were a message to all who would listen, a testament to what humanity could achieve when courage met ingenuity. Months later, the Empire began to stabilize. Rebel factions were neutralized, and the citizens of the Arveth Empire had seen the lengths to which a human would go to protect the Queen and her people. They had witnessed ingenuity and bravery in action, and had begun to reevaluate their assumptions about humanity. Elias understood the ripple effect of his actions. Humans, once strangers in this vast empire, were now respected and admired for qualities that no machine or technology could replicate. Despite this success, Elias remained haunted by the memory of Lyria. Each night, he would look at the stars, wondering if somewhere her spirit lingered among them, and he often found comfort in imagining that she watched him still, guiding him with the same quiet strength she had always shown. Humanity's role in the galaxy had changed. Where once humans had been considered fragile and inexperienced, they were now recognized as beings capable of inspiring entire civilizations, altering the course of empires, and demonstrating courage in ways even advanced alien societies could not predict. And all of it had been set in motion by a single act of bravery: the rescue of a woman who was more than she seemed. Elias began to take steps to ensure that humans and Arveth could work together. He shared knowledge of human tactics, resourcefulness, and problem-solving with loyalists in the Empire, helping them develop strategies that combined the best of both species. He facilitated trade, cooperation, and exchange of ideas, slowly building a foundation for long-term peace. In doing so, he discovered something even more profound. Humans were not just survivors. They were catalysts. Their boldness, creativity, and moral clarity could inspire entire worlds to reconsider their paths, to act not out of fear or self-interest, but out of courage and honor. Elias had learned this firsthand, and now he dedicated himself to spreading that understanding across the stars. Though the Empire celebrated him, Elias never forgot Lyria. He commissioned a memorial in her honor, a garden filled with luminescent plants and flowing water, a place of peace and reflection. The plaque bore a single message, in both human and Arvath languages. She believed in the courage of one human. In return, he changed the fate of worlds. As he walked through the garden, Elias felt a warmth that went beyond memory or grief. Lyria's influence had shaped not only the fate of the Empire, but also his own destiny. He was no longer just a pilot, A freighter captain navigating empty space, he was a symbol of what humanity could achieve, a living testament to the power of courage, ingenuity, and moral strength. Years later, Elias would tell stories of the journey, the rescue of a woman who was more than she seemed, the battles fought against impossible odds, the lessons learned from an advanced civilization. He would speak of Lyria not just as a queen, but as a being who had seen humanity's potential and believed in it enough to sacrifice everything. And those who listened, humans and Arveth alike, learned the same lesson, that courage, ingenuity, and moral conviction could bridge species, civilizations, and galaxies. That humanity, though young among the stars, had the power to shape destinies and inspire hope. Elias stood once more at the edge of the palace, gazing at the stars. Somewhere out there, Lyria's spirit seemed to shimmer among the constellations, a reminder that bravery and selflessness could transcend even death. He whispered her name softly, a vow carried across light years. I will honor you. I will not fail your trust. Humanity will rise. In that moment, he understood fully what she had meant when she asked him to trust himself and humanity. He was the embodiment of their potential, the proof that even one person's courage could influence the future of countless worlds. And in the silence of the night, as the stars stretched endlessly before him, he felt a quiet certainty. The legacy of Lyria and the spirit of humanity would endure far beyond the reach of any empire, any threat, or any darkness. Elias Monroe had rescued one woman. In doing so, he had set in motion a chain of events that would shape the galaxy, and though the Queen was gone, her belief in him and in the human spirit lived on, a beacon to all who would face impossible odds with courage, ingenuity, and heart. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had shone. And the memory of a queen who died for a man who had saved her would never fade.